Time now for our regular segment on the upcoming elections, Decision 2020, the SoCal Impact. There are 12 propositions on the California ballot this fall, and today we delve into one of them, Prop 17, which, if approved, would allow parolees to vote. Joining me now for more on this is Elizabeth Castillo of CalMatters. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Elizabeth, I know that California likes to think of itself as the first in the nation on so many fronts. This is actually an area, as you report, where there are lots of other places where this is already happening. Can you kind of set the national stage for this?
Yeah, so exactly, California likes to lead the nation, but actually across the country, at least 16 different states and the District of Columbia allow people on parole to vote. Vermont and Maine, they actually don't have any restrictions on folks who are incarcerated. So this is definitely something that's already kind of been brewing nationwide.
And so now here in California, there's the option for voters to weigh in and decide who could vote. And as you pointed out, this could be up to 50,000 people across the state who could be given the possibility to vote. Can you remind us, because I think that this might influence a lot of people in terms of how they decide how they vote on Prop 17, what sort of people are we talking about? Why have they wound up behind bars? How long might they be there for? Remind us who a parolee is.
Yeah, so a parolee is someone who was convicted of a felony, but they've actually been released from prison and they are back in the community, but they're still, technically serving a sentence. So when they're on parole, it's still part of their sentence.
So who is behind this effort, Prop 17, which would allow up to roughly 50,000 people, parolees, to cast ballots in future elections?
Right. So some of the supporters include the Californians for Safety for Justice and also Democratic Assembly member Kevin McCarty. He actually brought this forward in the legislature. So by a 2/3 vote, it is landing on your ballot. Essentially, this will be a constitutional amendment, an amendment of our state constitution. And so, and recently, the governor also came out in support of this proposal.
And what's the argument that they're making? Why are they saying we should allow parolees to vote?
Right. So the argument that they're making is that, this gives folks who are on parole an opportunity to re-enter into society, have a stake in their community. Advocates also argue that for folks who participate in civic engagement, they're less likely to commit future crimes.
And here, these are people who are oftentimes working, they're paying taxes, and of course, sometimes what you're voting on the ballot is where your taxes are going. So you could make that argument, right? Let them have some say in the matter, but not everybody agrees on this front. Who is opposing Prop 17, and what sort of argument are they making?
Yeah, so for those who are opposed, they're really saying that, well, parole is an opportunity for people who have committed a violent crime to prove that they've been rehabilitated. They really shouldn't be given their right to vote until they've been proven rehabilitated and they have completely paid off their debt to society.
Oftentimes, these propositions can wind up becoming very well-funded affairs. I was glancing briefly. It looks like fair amount of support in favor of it. Can you break this down for us? Is there big money in opposition as well?
So far, there hasn't been a ton of money thrown into an opposition, but that could always change. Folks are really continually funding things as long as they need to. So that definitely could change. But right now, there isn't a ton of money thrown in opposition.
And Elizabeth, this is where, for the most part, what we've been talking about has been pretty cut and dry. Now, I'd like you to kind of put on your analyst hat, if you don't mind, because, it takes a while for propositions to get on the ballot. But here we are right now, just a matter of weeks away from the election, and law and order has become a really prevalent issue. Do you think that that might influence at all how people in California make up their minds when it comes to something like Prop 17?
It definitely is a possibility. It's important to note that folks who are on parole, it does lean heavily toward people of color. Latinos and Black people specifically, they make up about 2/3 of those on parole in California. So there's really been this movement, right, kind of seeing different injustices happening to people of color. And so that definitely could sway voters later this year.
And Elizabeth, this is, of course, a statewide measure. Can you give us some context? Is there anyone right now here in California who has been convicted of a crime who is able to cast a ballot?
Yeah, so this would actually just be like another step for folks who have a criminal history to be able to cast a ballot. In most cases, if you're serving a sentence in a county jail, you already can vote. Um, However, that does change if you're waiting to transfer to a state or federal prison. But folks who are currently incarcerated in state or federal prisons cannot vote. And so this prop would just give more freedom to folks who are on parole specifically to be able to vote.
Very interesting stuff. Elizabeth Castillo of CalMatters breaking down Proposition 17 for us. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.